This is Eyewitness News Up Close with Diana Williams.
We will soon be seeing more scenes like this one. Our troops are coming home from Iraq, but what awaits them? How many of the tens of thousands of veterans will return to civilian life? Will they find jobs? And will they find the support they need for themselves and their families? Plus, some charities helping military men and women say donations are drying up. We'll tell you why and how you can help. And good morning and welcome to Eyewitness News Up Close. In October, President Obama announced that our troops, nearly 40,000 of them, will leave Iraq by the end of the year. Only about 150 to 200,000, or 200 rather, will remain as part of the U.S. Embassy Security Force. The announcement was no doubt a welcome news for military families, but the excitement is tempered by tough economic realities back here at home. The returning troops are facing the worst labor market in generations. The unemployment rate among the 2 million veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan wars is at 12% higher than the national average. Here to help us understand the challenges facing our veterans and what's being done to help them is Jonathan Schleifer. Jonathan, good to have you here with us. He's the Policy Director for IAVA, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. And a lot to talk to you about, Jonathan. I think we think of these 40,000 men and women coming back home. Help us to understand, or kind of give us a profile of who's coming back. Younger, older, men, women, educated, with college educated, not. I mean, give us a sense of who these men and women are.
Right, well, it's a real mix. I mean, we know that the average IAVA member is about 35 years old, but some of them are as young as 24 or 25, and some are ending their careers, a career in the military, so they could be in their 50s and such. We know that about 10% of them are women coming back. We know that the National Guard and Reservists from around the country have been used in these two conflicts more than ever before. So we have people who are weekend warriors who are now actually who have been serving 15 months across the ocean. Yeah.
Do we know how many are reservists?
We don't know how many. We don't know that yet. We do know that there's a lot of movement between the reserves and the active force. And we know that we have used the Reserve and National Guard in these two conflicts more than ever before. And so the new demands have been placed on them.
Is the assumption correct that if you're a reservist, your job is waiting for you when you come back?
That's the assumption. Unfortunately, it's not always the case. I mean, and while there are laws that are supposed to protect those jobs, we know that they're not always being kept, and that a lot of businesses are struggling to be able to respect and keep those jobs waiting for them.
And what about those who are coming back? Do they have the opportunity to stay in the military?
Yes, I mean, I think many of them do choose to do that. I think they look at the overall economy, they look at the overall jobs market, they look at the really frightening veterans unemployment rate, and they're choosing to stay in. We're hearing a lot of vets re-upping, going back to serve and redeploying because they don't feel safe entering the job market.
And for those who are over there now, who are coming back, who think, well, I'm probably not going to re-enlist, are they fully aware of how difficult the job market is over here right now?
That's what we're hearing. I mean, we know that they're watching the news, they're following it on Facebook, they're hearing about the challenges that other veterans that had preceded them as they transitioned home faced, and they know that there's a lot to fight when they get back.
So Pew Research Center, they did a study last month of post 9/11 veterans. 84% of these veterans believe that the general public does not understand the difficulties that they face. Help us to understand the difficulties that they face.
Right, and that Pew study what really reinforced something that we've known and we've been talking about for years. With less than 1% serving wearing a uniform, it's not like it was in World War II, where 1 in 10 people were in uniform and everyone knew someone who was serving, and they knew the struggles that someone who was separated from their family for extended periods of time, who were doing some really incredible things, but also seeing some really incredible things that had impacts on them. They also are coming back to a space where people don't really understand what they went through, right? When people meet a vet, they have a general sense that they're courageous, that they have honor, that they're going to show up on time, that they're disciplined, but they don't quite understand what it meant to be an infantryman. They don't know what it meant to be a gunner, to do logistics, to be a radio operator.
We kind of have that standard line, "Thank you for your service."
Right. But no one knows what service is.
We don't get what it is. We really don't.
They understand the sacrifice. They understand the sacrifice. They understand putting your name on the line, signing up, joining, that there's something heroic about that. Especially anyone who's enlisted recently knew what they were getting into. But no one really knows what that service looks like.
So there are bills right now that are out there to provide tax credits to businesses who hire returning vets. Your organization has been part of making that happen, creating these bills in Congress. Tell us about that.
Well, the Vow to Hire Heroes Act does, as you said, it incentivizes businesses to hire vets, provides up to $5,600 tax credits per vet employed, and that's for vets who have been unemployed for 6 months or longer. So those, the ones who are in the most dangerous space in the unemployment spectrum. And it also provides an additional tax for anyone who hires a disabled vet as well. But in addition to those tax incentives, it also improves the current training programs that we have out there for vets. And most importantly, it invests in a study that helps translate the military skills and experiences into the civilian equivalents. And that's where there's the big gap.
Right. Most dangerous space. What does that mean?
We know that the longer you're unemployed, the harder it is for you to get a job. And so, usually if you're unemployed for a month or two, you're sort of fresh, you're energetic, you're in the market. It's easy to explain to employers what you've been doing. We know that after 6 months, it becomes sort of a hot zone for unemployment, and you're actually much more vulnerable, and it's harder for you to find that work, and it's harder for you to engage and stay active. And employers also become a little bit suspicious. Well, why have you been unemployed for 6 months?
So the incentives for employers to hire those
are even higher.
Yeah. With this tax credit.
Exactly. It's a very smart program.
But historically, tax credits don't always assure that people will get hired.
Right.
So there are other things that you're trying to do as well.
Right.
Correct?
That's the translation study that I was speaking about. That's one of those things where, as I said before, people don't really understand what service meant. We have a member who is a medic, did incredible things in Iraq and Afghanistan. He came home and he wanted to do intake at a hospital. He couldn't do it. They want him to go and take all these courses just to do intake, mind you. And he should have been the first one in the door, the first one that he invited to hire, and that they would have wanted to hire. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. We hear that a lot from medics. Truck drivers, men and women who drove trucks in Iraq and Afghanistan, in incredibly dangerous situations. If you can drive a truck...
You would think if you could drive a truck there, you could certainly do it on 95 here.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, you're worried about IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
You're not worried about them here. Those men and women should easily be able to translate those skills, and yet the certification, the licensing, there's no equivalency yet, and so we're working on that as well.
Okay, stay with us, because when we come back, a former Marine shares his struggles looking for work and adjusting to life after leaving the military. We'll be right back after this. And we welcome you back to Up Close. We're talking this morning about challenges facing our troops as they return home. Our next guest is a decorated Marine who finished 2 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. As a squad leader, his job included leading combat patrol, but when he left the Marines, he struggled to find work. Tyler Tannahill joins us now to tell us his story, which is not uncommon among our veterans. And back with us also is Jonathan Schleifer. He's the policy director for IAVA, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Tyler, good to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And congratulations and thanks for your service to this country. You get that a lot, don't you?
Last few days, yes, definitely picked up. So.
Tell us about when you came home, because you came home back in 2008. The economy's not doing so great at that point. You decided you wanted to leave the service, and you needed to find a job. How difficult was it?
It was very difficult. You know, the bills don't stop. You still have that car payment. You still have to find a place to live and have rent. You still have to put food on the table. Unfortunately, I was single, so I didn't have to worry about children, but a lot of veterans coming back do have to deal with providing for a family. And for me, you know, it wasn't so much finding a job, but I could only find a minimum low-wage paying job. With my experience, leading combat patrols, like you said, having those management and leadership skills, the job just wasn't fulfilling also, so it was under-deployment in my case was a huge issue.
So when you went out to find a job and you're applying for jobs, I'm sure people asked you a lot about your military service and your record, right? Could they just not make the connection of what you did over there and how it might translate into work here?
Exactly, yeah, I found that often. The civil-military disconnect is just growing even more, like you guys had talked about earlier. They don't know what it means to lead combat patrols and be a squad leader. They don't realize that that basically means I was a manager of 12 people in life or death situations, and I had to do everything from mission planning to organization to delegating tasks and then following up to make sure those tasks were completed. So I do have the skills. It's just they don't realize what that means.
So how can that be fixed? How do you change that, Jonathan?
Right, well, and the challenge that he was describing of employers not understanding the skills that he brought also exists on the veteran side, where a lot of veterans don't know how to explain what they did. You know, he managed a team. You probably had a budget that you also were responsible for, which a lot of veterans leaving don't know how to explain. And so the Vow to Hire Heroes Act that we discussed before, as well as other programs that are out there. The White House recently announced a new initiative, a website where a veteran can go and put in their experience experiences and actually get a list of things that they can do to learn to talk about what they did and how those experiences can translate into the civilian workplace.
Any inappropriate questions ever asked of you when you were on job interviews? Did people...
For me, it didn't. I did have a lot of friends who got out around the same time I did, who did deal with like the PTSD stigma. And you know, IAVA has been great at kind of breaking those barriers, making it a dialect and saying, you know, though some people do have PTSD, it's not going to prevent them from doing the job, and it shouldn't prevent anyone from hiring them.
And PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Yes.
And it is out there in the news a lot. Did you find that that hindered you in trying to find a job, that perception that so many of the returning veterans might have that?
You know, for me personally, it really wasn't a question. None of the employers or jobs I applied for really put that in a question. For me, it was just mainly not understanding what it means to actually serve. Like you both had spoke earlier, everyone says thank you for your service. They don't know what that service means, and that's one thing that you know, hopefully this you know, Congress has just passed, you know, an IAVA has been pushing for. It really helps, you know, break that barrier down so people understand what that means.
And that's a challenge for your organization to deal with that stigma, right?
Absolutely. That was one of the first missions we took on, and educating the public about and telling stories. I think one of the best ways to break down that stigma is to meet Tyler and to talk to him and hear about what he did and hear about his struggles coming home, but also hear about his successes, hearing about the courses he's taking in school and learning what he can provide and bring to the workplace when he graduates.
Are there organizations or groups that are literally helping veterans craft a resume? Because I looked at your resume. It's so impressive, but it's a lot of military speak in there. And again, when you talk about that disconnect, is somebody helping veterans with their resumes, literally, something that simple?
There's no specific organization doing that. IAVA, though, recently worked with Google and actually put out what we're calling smart job fairs, where from soup to nuts we bring veterans in. If their tie isn't straight, we teach them how to tie a tie. If their resume isn't quite ready, we help them revise their resume. And so Google actually worked with us to bring in their resume professionals, their human resources people, to help us revise it, to help veterans work on their resumes. And so no specific organization, but IAVA has been active in working with them.
But clearly you recognize there's a need. There's a need for that. There's an absolute need for that.
You would think, though, also that the military would kind of set these future veterans up when they get out in these TAPS classes. And my original resume was not how it should have been. And I applied for internships and I applied for jobs going with a faulty resume that they're going to look at it and just throw it away. So one of the things with this Hire the Heroes Act is to revamp these TAPS classes to, you know, actually give you an updated resume that makes sense, so an employee can look at it and say, okay, you want to combat roles, you're a squad leader. This is what that means. And you know, this is what it means to be a leader in the Marine Corps and overseas. And so I said, you looked at my resume and you enjoyed it. Well, that's taken years to actually perfect because no one taught me how to do it.
Right. So you ended up making the decision to go back to school after you kind of got frustrated with the job market, correct? Correct.
I just finally decided that being a bouncer basically at a bar wasn't, you know, fulfilling, and it wasn't setting me up later on in life. I was tired of just the minimum wage job and the hours, so I said, if everyone keeps telling me you need that college degree, you need that college degree, so it seems like that's all employees are worried about right now. And the thing, so I just made the decision to go back to college and use the post 9/11 GI Bill, and I'm getting ready to graduate here in a year, and I'm looking forward to bringing my skills that I've gained from the military, as well as finally having that piece of paper that says, you know, I'm qualified for this job. You know, personally though, same with IAVA, we feel like this piece of paper is a little overrated in a sense, because these veterans do have skills and managing skills that are very essential to the workforce. I have to wonder, how's that college experience been for you as someone, you're 25, one of the older kids probably in the class, but also somebody far more mature probably than the rest of the students in the class? There was definitely a learning curve just going from, you know, military to that. I kind of tell people, you know, you don't do algebra for 4 years and then you're expected to do algebra all of a sudden. There is that little bit of a curve there, but also being 23 and then being in class with an 18-year-old who's worried about completely different things. One, they just graduated high school and they haven't been to Iraq or Afghanistan or both. They haven't seen some of the things and dealt with some of the things. You know, they're still getting money from their parents, and I'm here on my own. So going into class, there's this real, you know, almost an isolation feeling. You walk on campus, you're alone. Most campuses aren't really veteran friendly, and not anything against them, but they just don't know how to. So that's one of the things that I decided. I didn't want any veteran on my school to walk on campus and not say, welcome home, here's where your classes are at, here's what you need to do. I'd encourage any veteran on a campus, if they don't have that, to go talk to their faculty on their university and get those set up, because there's just one more angle that can help veterans succeed.
Because I'm assuming a number of these returning veterans are going to want to go off to college, right?
Right. And we know that close to 500,000 veterans have already used the new GI Bill and are going to school and they're getting the skills they need. Some of them are using the new GI Bill to sort of change courses. They may have been the medic in the military, but want to go in a different direction. The new GI Bill has been an incredible opportunity for them to go to school. And what Tyler was describing, veterans affinity groups, is one of those things that schools that really want to create a healthy, wholesome place for veterans can create and sustain. But it's also the type of thing that a corporation that wants to create a welcoming environment for veterans can do as well, because they sort of veterans face the same challenges in schools as well as in the corporate space, where there's just that disconnect that we just discussed before between the military and the civilian experience.
And you mentioned isolation. I wonder, when you first came back, you've been with a whole group. You ate with a group, you slept with a group. Was it difficult making that transition right when you came back home? And think about these folks coming back home. How difficult is that transition, and how's it going to be for them?
It is very difficult. You're, like you said, you're living, eating, and sleeping with your best friends for life. And then all of a sudden, you have no friends anymore. And you don't associate with the people your age back home anymore. You've just seen too much, you've been away for a long time. So your friends back home from high school or previous, it's just different. The connection's not there anymore. And honestly, when you don't have anyone to hang out with, you don't have anyone to talk to, your mind thinks about one thing, and that is, I miss my friends. I wish I was still with my Marine Corps buddies. And that just, it doesn't help, transition. It's just really tough. And for me, it took me twice to kind of reintegrate back into the college life. I ended up transferring schools because my first college I went to, I found myself just sitting alone, just not doing anything. I'd go to class and I'd come home, go to class, come home, and that was it. I had no social life. I didn't do anything extracurricular or anything. So I just decided, I'm not going to live this way. I need to just start over. So I transferred schools, and it's been, I just forced myself to get involved, and it's worked out really well for me.
Okay, so real quickly, because I know we're almost out of time here, if you had some advice to give to people for, these 40,000 men and women who are coming back, to help them acclimate, real quickly, what would it be? Tyler?
I would just say that we have skills. We can do the job, from leadership to management. And a lot of these skills and a lot of the tools we can bring in, the assets, a college graduate's not going to have, a high school graduate's not going to have. Our management skills and leadership and discipline was, we learned that on the battlefield in life or death situations. So I would just say, hire a veteran. We're fantastic workers. We want to work.
Yeah. And I would say just that to these vets, these men and women coming home, you're not alone. Many have come before you. Join IAVA at IAVA.org. It'll give them an opportunity to connect to other vets who have been there.
There are organizations out there.
There are organizations out there.
Okay.
We're going to welcome them home. We're ready for them.
Okay. Thank you both.
Good
luck to you.
Thank you.
When we come back, charities helping military families say that they need support now more than ever. We're going to tell you how you can help after this.